Welcome back, everybody. We're doing another episode of Indie Reads Aloud. I'm so excited today because Adam Dompierre is back. He writes really wonderful mysteries, and if you haven't discovered him yet, you really, really should. He's from the Upper Peninsula in Michigan and an English teacher. Welcome, Adam.
Thank you for having me. Glad to be here.
Thank you again. I know I've said this several times, but thank you again for lending your brain to the nurturing of other brains. Um, I hold teachers in a very high esteem, and especially English teachers, because that's my passion. So thank you very,
Appreciate that.
very much. I
Yeah,
appreciate you going into the trenches every day and dealing with the young people, because I know it's
that's
not easy.
right. Thank you.
So just catch everybody up. Introduce yourself a little bit by telling us about your writing journey. When did you discover that you had books hiding inside you?
Yeah, well, as you mentioned, I've been a teacher. This is my 16th year teaching. Um, I've done English, math, gym, music. I've done a little bit of everything, grade 6 through
Wow.
12. Yeah, English is my favorite, and which I do all the time now, which I really love. So the writing journey kind of started. I was teaching a class called creative writing to high school students, and really fun class. We would do different types of writing activities and exploration, and sometimes they would just get 20 minutes or so in a class period to write on whatever we had been covering, and
Yeah.
then I started writing along with them because then we would always share, and that was very fun. The enthusiasm and the talent of a lot of these students. Um, so they asked me to do it, and I was like, well, yeah, if I'm asking you to do it, I got to be willing to do it. So I started writing, and then um, that kind of led to the first scene of my first book. Um, and I don't really go in with outlines or plans. I just figure it out scene by scene. So at the
You
time, it was
rebel,
just like,
you.
yeah.
You're such a rebel. You're teaching kids English and parts of speech and how to put sentences together properly, and then you go off willy-nilly, completely off the script. And
Yeah, I do plan, essays and things like that. But the fiction is just I like to start with an idea that intrigues me and then figure it out as I go, which I think is good with the mystery genre because I start with the mystery and I tell people I don't know the
I
answer to the
don't know
mystery,
how it
right?
ends.
Yeah, I find that
Yeah.
as I go along. So I feel like I can't spoil it if I don't know it.
Well, yeah, and it does keep the writing fresh for you. That's for
Oh
sure.
yeah.
I've known a lot of authors who say I'm so engaged in the work because even I don't know what's coming and everything
Uh-huh.
surprises me. Um, I'm an editor person. That's what I do for a living. That's where my passion lies. So the rough draft feels like a lot of work for me, and I find all the joy in the refinement.
Okay.
So,
Yeah.
how long does it take you to draft out a book and then send it through the editing process to come to completion? For instance, the book you're going to read today, This Fell Sergeant, which is
hmm
the second in the Eddie London mystery series, from conception to publish, how long did that take?
It took about a year. I would say 9 months for the first draft,
Okay.
and then as you mentioned, editing it and going through and read it probably 15 times at least.
Yeah.
And you gotta sometimes you name a character on page 20 and then you need that name again on page 220. So you gotta go back and what was that guy's name?
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
stuff like that.
That's
So that's
why I love Microsoft Word's global search and replace.
oh yeah, absolutely.
Because you
You
can go
change
in
the
and
name or
look for those and change them
yeah,
all at once. Yeah.
many times.
Yeah.
Um, and then, kind of like you were talking about as well, I stress that to the students, like I could say the book is done in 9 months. Like it has a beginning, a middle, and an end and all that stuff. But it's really not done to the final product quality that I want. That takes another couple months,
Sure. Sure.
where it's already written you got to make it as good as it can be before you put it out for people to read. Um, so a few months on that, and then just the publishing itself and kind of building the marketing, and we just did a book launch Saturday up
Oh,
here.
Mazel tov.
That went really well. Thank you. Yeah, it was my third book, and we had the most
But it never
ever.
gets old, does it? It's
Oh,
always
it's the best part. Yeah,
yeah.
we had the most people ever turn out yet, and old readers and new readers, and some want to buy the old books now as well as the new book. So that's been awesome. It's just like this
Yeah, that's
tidal
super
wave.
fun. Yeah, it
Yeah,
is.
and
It
great.
is super fun. Okay, the book you're going to read today, as I say, is This Fell Sergeant. Now, I missed this, and I'm a Shakespearean nut, but somehow I missed this in Hamlet. Explain how the word fell is being used in this title because it's not 21st century grammatically correct.
Yeah. Um, so spoiler alert for Hamlet, but it's when he's dying, and he says, "Had I but time, but this fell sergeant death is strict in his arrest." Um, so fell, and we'll kind of get into the plot later, but fell not as in like fell over, but like it is a serious, he calls death a sergeant, which you can't delay or bargain with.
Right?
Strict in his arrest. And that's kind of the case that gets brought to our detective is um, this well a young woman shows up at his office and she says that her boyfriend has fallen off or pushed off or thrown off or jumped off something from a hotel balcony, and the police just kind of shrug their shoulders and they say, well, I don't know, I guess we're done here. But she thinks there's more to the story. She thinks something has happened that has been undiscovered to this point. So
Okay.
she hires this detective. So it's kind of that pun of like fell because balcony thing, but also the first one paint an inch thick was a quote from Hamlet as well. So I was like, okay, let me keep that going to kind of tie them together and establish this theme for the series.
Very cool. I like it. Anything that
I,
anything that reminds us of Shakespeare or gets us interested in his works, I am 100% in support of.
yeah, I've started with like I mean this is the cover, and then kind of the first thing in here I put the Shakespeare quotes. I started doing that with the books as well, so it kind of leads you into the story.
Fantastic. I'm ready to listen to you read. Are you ready to read for me?
Yeah. So
Fantastic. So give us a little setup of the book, and then when you're ready, please take the microphone and read aloud.
sure. So Eddie London, he had his first big case in painting his stick, like his first case ever, really. And he's starting to gain a little bit of a reputation for doing good work, but still an outsider, still kind of getting by on the skin of his teeth. And this young woman that I mentioned, she doesn't really have any money or means. She thinks she thinks she's not getting the full story with this balcony fall.
Okay.
Um, so she hires him, and he starts kind of looking into all the people involved. I'm gonna jump ahead a few pages. So he's already talked to her. Name is Lacey, and he's done a little research background on her boyfriend's name was Johnny.
Okay.
So in this scene, he visits Johnny's house to ask some questions of his parents.
Awesome.
And as you'll see here, Eddie still doesn't really know what he's doing. He makes some mistakes along the way, but that's
I
kind of part of the
love
fun
that your
of the series.
protagonist is not perfect. That's part of
Yeah.
why I love your story is that it's this guy has got some character flaws that are kind of fun. So
Oh
I
yeah.
like that
Yeah.
you make him very human that way.
I had a reader review that described him as quick-witted and slightly incompetent.
I
And I was
like
like,
it.
that's perfect. I've
Yeah,
been
it
using that ever
is.
since because
Okay.
yeah, he's not totally helpless, but you'll see kind of as we're talking. So he shows up at the house, and Johnny's mother answers the door. Sorry to bother you, ma'am. I wondered if I might ask a couple questions about Johnny. Johnny's mother broke into a dramatic sob. practically a wail at the mention of his name. As soon as it was out, I was sorry I'd said it. I needed to say it true. I could hardly expect that to temper the woman's pain. She retrieved one of those old-fashioned handkerchiefs from a pocket and dabbed at her eyes. The scene reminded me of Lacey when she showed up at my office that first day, except magnified threefold. If I hadn't known better, it might have struck me as a competition. I've already told you people everything I know, she said, her voice crescendoing. Now won't you please just let a grieving mother be? You people. The police? Because I'm not the police, she cut me off. Well, them too, come to think of it. No, she pulled the handkerchief away and took a better look at me. No, you don't look like the police. I suppose not. Then, more like a newspaper reporter, she declared, her voice dripping with contempt. Apparently, the grieving Mrs. Sullivan held newspaper reporters in the general esteem of cockroaches, although I couldn't see any reason that should be the case. I already told that woman, I'm not a newspaper reporter either, ma'am. There was nothing to be gained by getting on her bad side, so I did what I could to stay at least in her neutral, if not good graces. Her next question was obvious, even if my answer to it wasn't. Then who are you? A dozen lies shot through my head, and a handful of them probably could have made for convincing cover stories. I passed over them all. I'm a private investigator, I said. Lacey Matthews hired me to look into Johnny's death. I watched her reaction closely, that last sentence especially, but read only genuine confusion. She voiced as much. Lacey? But why? Bit of a long story, to be honest. Mind if I come in? I was tired of standing in the doorway. Maybe there was something to glean from inside the Sullivan home. Not about whatever happened to Johnny, necessarily. That seemed doubtful. But something to help color in the life he had led up to that point. Mrs. Sullivan nodded, tucking the handkerchief back into its place. If Lacey sent you, okay. I'm Grace. Her tone didn't reach quite so far as welcoming, but under the circumstances, I could accept that. She opened the door wider and beckoned me inside. Please, come in. I stepped into the house and found the interior a cozy bit of Americana. A pair of comfortable-looking recliners faced the door with a good-sized coffee table between them. Twin lamps bookended either side of the table, complete with charming pull-down chains that harkened back to a simpler time. An oval rug striped with various shades of oranges and purples lay in front of the table, tying the room together. All in all, not an unpleasant place to spend an afternoon or two. As I bent down to unlace my shoes, I heard Grace ask, "Can I get you something? Coffee?" "Coffee sounds great, thanks." Actually, it sounded awful because I hate this stuff. But I wasn't about to pass up an opportunity to snoop around a bit before we settled conversation. She stepped beyond the chairs, disappeared into the kitchen, and I commenced snooping. There was a fireplace to my right, and a row of framed pictures lined the mantel above it. I gauged I could cover the distance in 2 long strides. Didn't seem like anyone else was in the house with us, but I could hardly be sure of that, and Johnny's mom might reappear with the coffee I didn't want at any moment. I stretched my left leg out about as far as it would go, planning to follow suit with the right leg quickly after. I only got halfway through the plan, though, before Mrs. Sullivan stuck her head back into the living room. "Looks like we have a couple—" She stopped there, a sudden cessation inviting me to turn and meet her eyes. My left leg was still way out in front of me, looking anything but natural. Worse yet, I could hardly maintain my balance to hold the position. I felt my legs start to tremble underneath me, threatening to enter full-on wobble mode. "What are you doing?" Her face showed more curiosity than irritation, but that was a fine line sometimes. I dropped my right knee to the floor, finally relieving the strain at the cost of somehow looking even sillier. No choice left but to think of something quick. "Old football injury," I said, wincing as I continued to stretch the leg out. "Acts up sometimes." "You don't say." I rose to my feet and got to work on distracting her attention. "You were saying you have a couple—" "Oh, yes." Her eyes shifted, refocusing her concentration back to what she had come into the room to tell me. "We have a couple different flavors in here. There's Hawaiian hazelnut and a southern pecan." I tried to imagine the taste of either in my mouth and curled up my nose involuntarily. But that felt rude, forcing my overworked brain to cover for my traitorous body for the second time in a handful of seconds. "Nut allergy," I lied. The lie didn't feel great. They rarely do. But it felt a whole lot better than drinking coffee would have. "Oh, too bad." Sounded genuinely sympathetic, which made the lie even worse. "Water would be great." "Water, then." She retreated back into the kitchen. I had already covered half the ground of the mantel. As soon as she was out of sight, I covered the other half. 5 pictures lay side by side on the mantel. I leaned in close to the leftmost to see what I could gather. Well, would you look at that? I spun around at the sound of Mr. Sullivan's voice, leaning my elbow back on the mantel and trying to look as casual as humanly possible. But I saw she hadn't returned to the living room. The sound of some rummaging from the kitchen confirmed that she hadn't seen me. I found some French vanilla, she said, stepping into the living room. I'll get some of that going for you. No nuts. I could have protested, but she looked so pleased with herself, and the woman had just lost her son. Plus, I appreciated that she didn't seem to mind me posting up on the fireplace mantel. I figured she deserved a win. Sounds great. When the room was my own again, I reset my position to study the photos. The first was a brown dog with black spots and golden eyes, its mouth hanging open in a dopey grin. A charming pet, no doubt, but probably not the clue that was going to bust this case wide open. I moved past it. The next 3 were family photos. Now we were getting somewhere. Mrs. Sullivan was there with her husband, and Johnny too. I wasn't much good at estimating ages past a certain point. A liability in my line of work, really. But Johnny looked to be in his early 20s. A relatively recent photo there. They stood in front of a lake populated with distant sailboats. All 3 of them were decked out in beach garb, with Johnny sporting dark sunglasses and a blue and white towel draped over his shoulder. His long hair fell over his face, and he wore an easy smile. The guy looked straight out of Surfer Dude's central casting. Even the requisite sun peeked out of the right upper hand corner of the frame. I wondered if I could place the lake, but given the limited scope of the photo, there was no way. California might fall short of Minnesota's 10,000 lakes, but we had plenty. Heck, I didn't even know if the photo had been taken in state. I dismissed the notion and turned my attention to the next picture in line. This one is far older, evident not only by the age of the print itself, but the principal figures were also dramatically younger. I recognized Johnny's face even with the years stripped away. He was 6, maybe. He and another boy had their arms draped around each other's necks, big smiles on both of them. They wore child-sized cowboy hats, and their outside hands held shiny toy pistols. An outlaw even then, perhaps. The phone rang in the kitchen, which I hoped would buy me a minute or two, but Mrs. Sullivan dismissed the call quickly. Sugar or cream, she called from the kitchen. The break in my concentration was an annoyance. The coffee drinker would have given their answer easily enough, but I had no experience to go on. Anything to get back on task. Yes, please. I turned to the mantel. Both then? I sighed, quietly enough that she couldn't hear. Yes, please. In the 4th photo, how many? How many what? My head was starting to hurt. 2 of each, please, I said, not knowing or caring which units we were even dealing with. 2 of each, the voice from the kitchen confirmed. The clinks and clanks resumed, reassuring me I could count on some more undisturbed time. Back to the 4th photo. There again were Mr. and Mrs. Sullivan with a baby between them. Johnny, presumably. The child had one of those striped shirts that always look so ridiculous on a baby. But there was something appended to the left side of his chest, just over the heart. I leaned closer. Between the black and yellow stripes there was a sky blue letter, but an awkward fold in the fabric made it difficult to tell which. A J would have made sense. Coffee's on, Mrs. Sullivan said from the kitchen. I heard her gather up the cups on her way back to the living room. I squinted at the photo again, trying to discern the mystery letter. A W, I decided, but maybe an M. And that meant I couldn't rule out an N. Probably irrelevant, but then one never knows. I only had enough time for the quickest of glances at the final photo as I stepped back towards the chairs. Lucky for me, it was just that goofy dog again. In this one, it was wearing a top hat. I didn't make it to the chair before Mrs. Sullivan came back through, but I had gone far enough to assuage any fears that I had spent the preceding minutes scouring over the collected mementos of her life. Let me help you with that. I took a cup from her and we each settled into one of the twin chairs. You seem like a nice young man, she said. Probably makes your mother proud. Maybe once in a while, I conceded. She smiled and took a sip of coffee. I was content to let mine air out. You think you can help Johnny? She asked. Her eyes demurred in response to the poor wording. Help solve his case, I mean. Maybe, was as far as I could go at the moment. Tell me about your son. She took a deep breath, and I thought she might go for the handkerchief again, but it stayed in her pocket. He was a kind soul. I guess every mother has to say that, but he really, well, he did his best. That was either high praise or a wickedly backhanded compliment. Absent context, it could go either way. What did he do for work? I guess you'd call him a, what's the word? Entree entrepreneur. Yes, she nodded. Yes, of course, that's it. On his own then, business-wise? Yes, I think so. She said that as though those weren't two different answers. Witch. No, he definitely wasn't a witch. I imagine not. I consulted my notes from Lacey's deposition. Ever hear the name Muriel Slade? Mrs. Sullivan shook her head. Is he a friend of Johnny's? Johnny had so many friends. I don't know that friend is the word, I said. Coworker, maybe. Well, that makes sense. Coworkers, too. He always had so many business ideas. Such a bright young man. And he always did his best. That stream of information felt dry. I pivoted. You have a lovely home here, I said, rising to my feet. What a great fireplace. I set my coffee down, still untasted, and turned as though it was the hearth I was interested rather than the photos. Look at that brickwork. Thank you. He followed me to where I stood. My husband built this whole place himself, he and his father. Is that right? I said, genuinely impressed. This is your dog, I take it? Mrs. Sullivan grabbed the first photo and looked at it with a wan smile. Used to be. That's Archer, the best dog there ever was. 3 years now he's been gone. That explained the makeshift shrine. Sorry to hear that, I said, and I was. The classic family dog, you know. Never met a person he didn't like, that dog. We've had a few over the years. Good dogs all. But Archer was, well, he's on the mantle. She gave the picture one last look, then set it back. Might seem silly to keep photos of this old mutt around. I guess it's the sentimentality in me. Nothing wrong with that. I stayed quiet then, hoping she would take the next logical step and tell me about the other pictures. Any additional information could be valuable. She seemed in the talking mood, and I think she would have done just that, but she never got the chance. So I'll leave it on a kind of a
Oh
cliffhanger
no,
there.
you're not gonna do that to me. Spurs.
Gotta see what happens next. Yes.
Oh, okay. Now I gotta go put that one on my TBR. Not like I'm
Very good.
complaining. I'm not complaining. Uh,
Yeah.
this just sounds like another fun story. I love the little noir flavor you've got going through these books. They're
Yeah.
just super fun.
Thank
Um,
you.
now we talked in the green room, and you said that both of these books, even though they are part of a series, can be read as standalones. Do they have to be read in order? Is it better to read them in order, or does it really matter?
It doesn't really matter. There's some tiny references to the first book and the second book, but they're totally separate cases. I think I said in the first one he's got to find a missing painter. Painter has disappeared. In this one, we're researching the fall from the balcony. So you will see it's the same characters return from book one. But I mean, I also kind of wrote it with the idea that for some people this would be their first book. So kind of introduced it in a way that everything's going to make perfect
Excellent.
sense in either
Well,
case.
well, you do one, you got to go and read the other one, right?
Yeah, hopefully.
Yeah. Um, so I'm working on writing a series and I'm finding it a
Mhm.
challenge. What was the biggest challenge for you in adding a second book to this collection?
So the first book I wrote well my first book was about a detective who's um, been in the game for a long time and he's got a lot of experience and he really does his job well. He's kind of fearless and good with a car and with a gun and you know that type of character. So when I did these Eddie London books, I wanted to flip everything, right? So
Yeah.
he's totally uh, starting from nothing, from zero, and he doesn't know. It's like anything in life until you do it. It's like, how do you know how to do it? You know?
So
Um,
did you find switching from being experienced and having that finesse to kind of stumbling through, was that where the challenge lived?
um, it was in a way a challenge, and it was in a way kind of less pressure because he's supposed to make mistakes. You know what I
Uh,
mean?
yeah.
Um, and then it's kind of I guess a different type of challenge because ultimately you don't want to read about somebody who's just lousy at their job all the time. That just gets
or
frustrating and
somebody who's
you
perfect at
know.
it.
Yeah, yeah. So I guess finding the balance of like he's still got to be good enough that he solves these cases and that people hire
Sure.
them and that we you know each book the ending is get to a satisfactory ending that the readers are gonna feel wasn't a waste of their time,
Right,
trying to
right.
make the
And we
ending
all
the
love
best
that.
the best part. So yeah,
Right, right.
the genre really leads itself to that. It's like, okay, so what's the solution? What's the reveal? Um, and then what's kind of nice, like we were just talking about with the order of the books is like I feel it's really set up so I can just have a new case come. I'm working on the third book in this series. It's about
Yeah, I was
halfway
gonna ask. Yeah.
done. Yep. So that one I'm shooting for 2027. Um,
Okay.
and then really, so once I get the idea of like, okay, what is the case? Um, then we're off and running.
Fantastic.
We start with that initial scene again.
Do you struggle with what's the next case going to be, or do you have an Excel file with a bunch of cases that you'd
That's
like
a
to
that's a great
explore?
idea. No, no, I usually the idea takes a while. The actual writing I can do very quickly, but like I said, I don't have an outline or anything. So a lot of times I don't write anything for it could be weeks because I'm just thinking like,
Well,
okay, so where do we go from here?
50% of an author's job is staring out the window looking for ideas.
Yes, yes, yeah. I think I'm like 75-25. Driving to work or, like anywhere. You can
Right.
you can be sometimes you have a dream and you wake up and you're like, oh,
Yeah,
I've had I've
that's
had things get into books from that.
yeah.
So yeah, it's nice to just have, and I guess the other thing about the series is like once you know the characters,
Hmm.
um, you feel like they kind of live in your head in a way that's like they're always
They
kind of there.
feel
You know what
more
I mean?
familiar, right?
Yeah, and
So
and and
writing
much
the next
easier to
book
write.
doesn't so
Yeah,
the next book in sequence doesn't feel as difficult because you already have a grasp of who these people are.
yeah. At least the main character, and then there's some minor characters that show up, recurring. Um, but then of course there's a lot of new characters because this is a new case and these are new people, and that's kind of the fun too. Is like in this noir slash almost a comedy hybrid. It's like you can really make up some colorful, interesting personalities. The cover here we got playing cards
Right.
and
Yeah,
the
I was
wasp,
gonna
which
ask it if is it too much to ask to tell us what that symbolism is? Do we have to read the book to figure it out?
I mean, I'll give you the playing cards. One of the main characters that he comes across is a big time gambler,
Okay.
and we have this kind of this organized crime syndicate and mobsters and fake police officers. I bring a newspaper reporter is a new character in this book, so I exploring a lot of those new avenues for characters. Um, so that's kind of the cards with the gambling connection, and then the wasp. I can't really explain without giving too much away, so I will
Okay.
leave
No,
that
I
part
don't
of
want you to give
mystery.
it away. Yeah, absolutely.
Um, but I thought that was cool imagery. You don't see those two things together often, right? So it's like,
Exactly. Right.
oh, what's
Yeah.
what's this about to catch a
It
reader's
it
eye?
it definitely is eye-catching, and it certainly, at least for me, makes me want to pick it up and flip it over and read the back to find out what it's about.
Perfect. Yeah, yeah. Thank you.
So, last thing before I let you go, um, so many writers, we all have different ways of doing things, and so many writers require absolute silence. And then there are others who have music constantly in the background, or the TV is on, or whatever. Are you a silent writer, or are you do you need that background noise? And if you have a playlist, can you give us some examples of what's on it?
Yeah, I am a music person for sure. Um, Either instrumental or music that I'm so familiar with that I'm not gonna like distract my brain. You know what I mean? As for specific, like Bob Dylan, Leonard Cohen, Uh, I think like writers who lyricists, Tom Waits,
Hmm.
Bruce Springsteen, like people who tell stories through their songs.
Sure.
I like to have just because man, you'll catch like a turn of phrase and you're like, oh, that's so cool, or just I mean, I'm thinking about like some of Bob Dylan's story songs in particular, where it might be like one line to describe a character, and you're like, oh yeah, I know exactly who this person is. You
Right.
know,
Yeah. Those
that economy of
musicians.
language.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah. I love that phrase, economy of language. That's great. Um, the I don't know if you've read it, the what's it called? The Giver by Lois Lowry.
Oh yeah, I haven't read it, but I'm familiar with it.
So in that she uses the phrase specificity of language.
Mm,
Like
right.
whenever people, because it's a an emotionally um, stagnant community, and whenever someone starts to lean away from that toward emotional language, the response is specificity of language, please. So that always comes to me is that I have to be specific with the language I use in my writing, but not so dry that the reader can't feel it. And I think that's an interesting line to walk. Do you find a similar thing?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it's amazing, like one word, how that can change everything. You know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, and whether it's like dialogue or character description, and even like um, just like the connotation of a word. Like determined is good, but stubborn is bad.
Right.
So which is it?
And I
It's the
and
same
I
thing.
think it's and again this comes back to the title of the book in the way that you're using those three words, this fell sergeant. You're using it to invoke a double meaning, which I just love. I think it's
Yeah,
fantastic.
thanks.
Absolutely fantastic. I'm so glad you came back on the program again. Congratulations on your expanding writing career. This is
Thank you
so
so much.
exciting to see another book from you. And when you've published the next one, will you come back and read for me again?
Oh, I would love to. Absolutely. No question.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Adam. I hope you have a
Thank
great
you.
rest of your day.
Thank you. You too.